Today, I'm going to do some plastic dipping because I want to mark some of my tools. So let's get started. Now there's different forms of plastic dipping, and I'm not going to get any results, anything close to what these companies can do commercially. But what I want to do is mark a couple of tools with some plastic dips so that I can find them better. So let me show you my main purpose here today. So the main thing I'm interested in, there's some other tools as well, but I'm going to try it with this. And in fact, I've got some old pliers. You can see that I painted them and a lot of that paint has come off. I want to mark these so that they stand out because a lot of my tools are black and they blend in with the background. So what I did a video on this. I used this special tape on here, and I changed this a couple times. You can see that it worn off, and it was a bright red at one time, but it's just not that way anymore. So I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to polish this up. Probably drill a hole in it because I need to hang this from a wire, but I'm also going to seal this area here so that I don't get any of the plastic dip in there. So I'll do that off camera, and when we come back we should be ready to go. Okay, so I've taken a clean cloth and I've thoroughly cleaned the two tools that I'm going to be dipping here. And now the next thing is to open this can, this brand new can. And what I wanted to do when I open it, I'm going to show you in here what it looks like. Now, I can't really tip the can, but I can show you. If you look at the top, see there's some clear oil at the top. And this is the reason why it's super important with any can, even if it's already been opened before, how important it is. Now when I go deeper, see I'm starting to get some color in here. It's super, super important to stir these things thoroughly. So I'm going to do that for the next few minutes and make sure that I get this right down to the bottom and get everything completely stirred in, because when you don't do that, these things just don't work. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've stirred that thoroughly now, and the instructions say, and they're very clear about this, I've done some extra reading on this product as well, and what I've discovered is, first of all, in the instructions, they say to go 1 inch every 5 seconds. So they want you to go slowly in all the way down and then slowly back out at sort of at the same thing, an inch every 5 seconds. And what I've discovered is that when you go too slowly, it's the rolling, whoops, I've just dipped that in there by accident. It's the rolling in. I'm just going to take that off of there because we don't want that in there just yet. When you roll in, it's the material, how it folds against the tool, apparently, that makes this a success or not. So anyway, I've got my watch off, and I'm just going to kind of watch that. And I didn't actually check to make sure I'll be able to dip this in, but hopefully it will go all the way in there, although it's looking like it might not. Yeah, it's not. Oh, there it goes. This is going to be a mess bringing it back out, but yeah, that wasn't. Okay, and one of the things they say is that when you bring it out, it shouldn't be dripping, and mine is a little bit. I'm going to redo this. not that pleased with this. I've struggled with this. Oh, it doesn't look that bad, but I can see on the top here where it was scraping. Okay, well, I'm going to take that away and let that hang up. I can re-dip this again in an hour, but actually I'm fairly pleased with the way that looks, except at the very top where I scraped that. But the whole point of this is to mark it, so I think that might be success. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is these pliers, and again I've cleaned them, and all this is electrical tape to keep the wire. I have the wire up in the jaws up here, so let's watch again. This one will be easier now because I don't have to, it'll fit in there, so let's give that. Okay, and that doesn't look like that's going to drip either. Now that's looking much better and much cleaner pour than that. Okay, that looks good. Now I have to let this sit for at least an hour and 4 hours before I can use the tool, but I'm going to do a couple of more dips on this one. The other one I think is going to be fine because all I really wanted to do was to mark that tool, and it's marked pretty good now. So we'll come back in an hour and I'll re-dip this one and we'll have a look and see what the key for the drill press looks like. Okay, so it turns out this isn't an hour later, this is the next day. And the reason is I was so happy with the way the pliers turned out, and that's only one coat, that I started looking around and I've got all sorts of things that I could coat. These, I just started off with these. These are wrenches for one of my routers. Of course, they were black, hard to see. But the main thing I wanted to do was to do the key for my drill press, and I've started to take that off because I didn't want to get the plasticization inside the mechanism. And look at that, that's going to be just perfect, and that should last a lot longer. And if I have to re-dip this, I can do that. But you know, there's the, remember I showed you the tape? That's what that original tape looked like, and that's what it looks like, you know, a few months later when you're grabbing it and holding it and so on. So this should last much, much better than that. Really thrilled with this. Now, when I started looking around, I thought, you know what? What else could I do? And, you know, here's another example, another black tool. This is the tool for my miter gauge, for adjusting my miter gauge, for sort of resetting and readjusting. And I keep misplacing it or wondering where it is. Black handle. There's no reason that you can't do plastic, and that's, I'm going to do this one as well. I just need to peel this off and rough it up and clean it. But look at, there's all sorts of things that you can make for jigs. There's knobs and handles and so on. All of this stuff can be, and of course it all comes in black. Even if you're making your own knobs, you can still, you could cover that with a piece of plywood or something like that, or even just some you could even put tape on that. There's all sorts of things you could do, and then the plasticize that, it would cover that all over. So lots of potential for this. This is going to be something I'm going to use a lot. Of course, it comes in, I got red because that's the only one that they had available when I was looking, but there's also yellow and green and blue and probably black as well. So anyway, I'm pretty thrilled the way this is turning out, and that's only one coat on these. Boy, it's amazing how you do little things around your workshop, and it just makes a whole big difference in how you work. And that's something that I'm going to be using more of. And the more I look around my workshop, the more things that I see that I go, oh, I could dip that, because I seem to never be able to find that. For me, a lot of this stuff seems to blend in, and if I can make some of it stand out a bit with some red, I might even get some yellow and make some of the odd bits and pieces that I have, tools and that, dip them yellow. But it's clear to me that the secret for getting success with this is, first of all, making sure that you stir the plastic dip, stir it well. The other thing is I sanded, I think I mentioned all this, I sanded this down with a wet dry sandpaper, and I used, I think, about a 300 grit. So it put a little bit of a tooth on there as well. Then I cleaned it well with acetone, and clearly that works. Another dip on some of these would help, but for me, mostly I just wanted these tools to stand out, because when I'm working with them and I lay them down and they're sort of amongst other tools on my workbench, I end up looking around, then I forget what I'm looking for, and finally I spot them. And this way, some of these tools that I'm looking for all the time, they'll stand out a bit more. Now, I know some of you are going to say, why don't you just use on your drill press, why didn't you just use a tether? And I've tried that with 3 different kinds of tethers on my drill press. They drive me crazy, which is why I don't tether my key on my drill press. I use a magnet and I have it right beside the chuck, but I don't always put it back, so this will fix that little problem for me. That concludes my video for today. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.